How can you ensure that you're ready for anything that comes your way in season and out of season? Now, we might go through things in life where they're just complete surprises and nobody could have predicted it, nobody could have understood them, and nobody could have foreseen them coming. But how do you ensure that when those times come, you can respond in the right way in all seven realms: mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, vocationally, financially, spiritually? How do we ensure that we are ready for those times when we respond? And we're ready for those times when they come. How do we make sure that happens? Well, the Bible gives us a few key steps here in First Peter that we want to go over with you today. We are the service church. The Bible says that serving others is the quickest path to transformation and healing. 45 years ago, God gave a man we know principles from the Bible that have transformed tens of thousands of lives. These simple, practical principles and tools set people free from guilt, fear, anxiety, and depression. We are dedicated to sharing these principles and tools throughout the world. So the passage we're in today is in 1 Peter, the book of 1 Peter, chapter 5. So you can see this big 5 right here. And we're going to start in verse 5. But we're going to start here where I have it highlighted. And so it says, "Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility towards one another. For listen to this, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." And then speaking of humility, look at where he goes next with this. "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that," in other words, if you humble yourself, this will happen. There's a cause and effect. Look for those kind of words of "so that," "if then," in the Bible, because those are cause and effect. It says that if you do this, if you humble yourself, then this can and will happen. "So humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you." And we're going to stop there for just a second, because humbling yourself, this doesn't mean self-deprecation. It doesn't mean that you're talking bad about yourself and focusing on your weaknesses and negatives about yourself. It's not what this means at all. But what it means is that you recognize the fact that God has given us certain things and told us to do certain things, and that we place ourselves under God's authority and we are obedient to what he tells us to do, whether we see a path forward or not, whether we see a reason for doing it or not. Great example is what he says just before this, where he says, "Clothe yourselves with all humility towards one another." So in other words, be humble towards one another. Again, it's not saying that you self-deprecate yourself in front of other people. It's not what it's saying. What it's saying is don't place yourself above somebody else. That's what it's saying. And there's a big theme of service throughout the Bible whenever it comes to humility. And so that's just one example. But it says clearly here, humble yourself under God's mighty hand. And there's this recognition that God knows what he's doing. He's told us to do what we're supposed to do. And what it's saying here is do what he's told you to do. And here's what's key. So that what? So that at the proper time he may exalt you. How many times do we know what we're supposed to do? We know what God says that we're supposed to do, and we fail to do it, maybe because we don't believe that the right outcome is going to happen, or maybe we just completely forget that we're supposed to do it. And he's saying that, look, the way that God will exalt you, and he'll exalt you at the proper time. There's a time and a place for everything. And he's saying that in order for that to happen, we have to humble ourselves under God's mighty hand. Now, it doesn't just stop there, right? Because we're asking the question of how do we make sure that we're ready at any time? And at the end of the day, we never know. You never know. How many times has an opportunity come your way that you knew that you really wanted and you just weren't ready for it? How many times has an opportunity come your way and you just didn't expect it? You know, at the end of the day, what the Bible is saying here is God will exalt you at the proper time, but it's going to be on his timing. And the question is, how do you prepare? How do you ensure that you're ready in season and out of season? So the first thing, Humble yourself. And then it says, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. How many times have you found yourself not doing what you're supposed to be doing, whether God told you to do it or otherwise, and you find, and you really dig deep and you realize, hey, the reason why I didn't do that is because I was afraid. Go back in Matthew, I think 23 it is, and it talks about the parable of the talents. And there's one servant who he gets these talents, and instead of investing them, he puts them and digs them, he buries them in the ground. And the master comes back and says, hey, why didn't you do something with this? And he calls him a wicked servant. Why didn't you do something with this? And the servant says, because I was afraid of you. And so I just want you to see, God says, cast all your anxieties on me. I want you to see how a lot of times whenever we fail to act or we fail to obey, we fail to do what we're supposed to do, anxiety is at the core of it. And God is saying, hey, I know you. I know that's in you. I want you to cast your anxieties on me. Why? Because he cares for you. That's what I want you to hear. God knows that you have anxieties. He knows that that is at the core of why you don't do what he tells you to do. And he says, cast those on me. And as you cast them on me, you forget about them. What do you do when anxiety comes and just kind of floods you? What do you do to battle anxiety? Check out our video on how to deal with and how to handle anxiety, because we go through Philippians 4, 6, 7, and 8, which is a huge passage on anxiety. Matthew 6 is also a huge passage. But the Bible is really clear about how to and what to do with anxiety. It just simply says, don't be anxious. And of course, there's definitely steps that it gives in those passages. So go check out that verse. But we got to move along here. So cast all your anxieties on God because he cares for you. Be sober-minded. In other words, be logical. And I want you to write numbers here because there's 3 things he tells us to do. Be sober-minded, 1. Be watchful. In other words, be logical versus emotional. Number 1. Be watchful. Keep a watch out. This next part's key. Your adversary, your enemy, in other words, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Watch out for the devil because he is going to try. And he's constantly looking for people who are sitting unguarded, unwatchful, who are sitting naive, who are sitting believing that either they don't need God or they're just sitting and trying to be comfortable and they don't want to think about the negatives of life. And so what ends up happening is that they get sucked into the devil's traps. And he's saying, hey, you got to be watchful. So be logical versus emotional. Be watchful for your enemy. And whenever and at all times, resist. Resist the devil. Firm in what? Firm in your faith. So those are key things. So humble yourself under God's mighty hand. He's told us what to do. Obey what he's told us to do. God will exalt us at the proper time. As you humble yourself, cast all your anxieties, your worries, your doubts, your fears on him. Go to Philippians 4, 6, 7, and 8. Go watch that video on anxiety that we talked about. Because God cares for you. And then do these 3 things. Be sober-minded, be logical versus emotional. Watch for the devil. He's there. God promises it. He's there. The devil is there. Watch for him and resist him. That's an active phrase. That is not a passive thing. That is something we have to actively do emotionally, mentally, physically. We have to actively resist. So that's it for the day. Really enjoy spending this time with y'all. Please leave some comments below. How do you make sure that you're prepared no matter what comes? Maybe you're an athlete, and what do you do during off season in order to make sure that you're kind of prepared for the next season and you don't kind of atrophy your muscles or pack on too many pounds before the next season? Leave some comments below. Also, click the like button and the subscribe button if you enjoyed this. When you click the like button, it helps the YouTube algorithm share this and know to share this kind of video with other people so that other people can be helped too. All right, look forward to talking with y'all next time.